The WAFB Podcast Network is sponsored by Neighbors Federal Credit Union.
All right, so LSU football has reached the bye week. The Tigers 4-1 heading into this week off. And we all know what comes a week from now at this point. Ole Miss coming to town. Biggest game for the Tigers, really, I would say, for the season. Because think about it like this. You pick up this second loss. Think about what you have on the schedule still to play. Ranked Texas A&M, probably a ranked Oklahoma team. Obviously, you've got Alabama. Arkansas on the road is no slouch. So, you pick up a second loss before you even get into that gauntlet. Coming off the bye week, not to mention, you're in a really, really tough spot if you want to make the playoff, do something memorable this season. And it reminds me of last year. Now, I will give LSU credit. They made it through the month of September this year without picking up that second loss. So playoff, SEC title, all that's still in play, unlike last year when they ended the month losing to Ole Miss in Oxford. It's kind of funny that your first game back from the bye, your first game of October is, again, the Rebels there. But this team's in a good place, I think. So this is what I want to do. I filmed an episode of Game Time 3 weeks ago, and the thumbnail, the title, the theme was, I'm very concerned about LSU football at that point in time in terms of what my preseason expectations were, which were to go 10-2, make the playoff, really just kind of live up to the team that I thought they would be and be relevant this year. Not that they weren't relevant last year, but, no one around here wants to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl and be a top 15 team. Everybody here, every LSU fan wants to win the SEC championship, win the national championship, be relevant all season. At the very least, make the playoff. So, nobody wants to just kind of be a fringe team every year. So, if those were your expectations of being elite, of making the national title, the current version of LSU I was seeing a couple weeks ago was not a team that I think would get there. Now, I want to check in a couple weeks later at the bye and see, is LSU there? Are they closer to getting there? And I'll say this, no, they're not there, but I think that they're getting there. Can they make those steps quick enough, soon enough, make the steps big enough as well in time before things go downhill, right? Before you pick up that second loss, before you go on a little bit of a losing streak that tarnishes your season. And these 2 weeks right here are the biggest of the season for LSU. The bye, a good time to get healthy. You've got some guys that are banged up, obviously Chris Hilton, Caden Durham, CJ Daniels, a few other guys. They've got time to get healthy. You've got time to game plan, to watch film from the first 5 games of the season, continue to tinker things, continue to fine-tune and figure out what you do well so that when you come out and play on, October the 12th there against Ole Miss, your best 11 are on the field on both sides of the ball. Your opening script is perfect. The plays you want to run, you can execute at a high level on both sides of the football. That's got to be the best version of this team. Because if it's not, you're not winning the game. And at that point, your season is basically over in terms of playing for the national championship and all that kind of stuff. I do think this team is better, though. I feel a lot more optimistic about what they could do against Ole Miss, really anybody, than I did when they lost to, or I should say beat, but, kind of felt like they lost to South Carolina and Columbia. One, I think the defense is better. South Alabama, I know you could sit here and go, oh, it's only South Alabama, but I'm not going to play two sides of the fence here. I was hyping up this Jaguars offense. A lot of people were. They were averaging like 40 points per game, if not more, coming into the matchup against LSU. Major Applewhite, scheming up with a good quarterback and intriguing running back and skill position talent and stuff. And they largely didn't do anything. I was surprised to look at the box score and see that they totaled over 300 yards. Because if you watch the game, it didn't really feel like that. And I have a slight suspicion that a lot of those yards came in garbage time late in the game when the starters weren't really in there, right? Here's what was impressive to me. South Alabama, 4 of 14 on third down, and you held them to 115 rushing. If you can do those two things against every offense you see or even come close to those kind of outputs against every offense you see the rest of the season, you're going to be in a really good spot. It was also impressive because the Tigers didn't get any forced turnovers in this game either. So it wasn't like the defense only gave up 10 points because they had a couple picks in the red zone. They forced a couple fumbles. No, they just stood on business, bowed their neck in the red zone. You had a goal line stand, and you had several turnover on downs. So for them to play as well as they did without the element of the turnover, which LSU's defense has benefited from in some games this season, was very impressive. Now, I look back at the South Carolina game because to me, Nichols, UCLA, don't really care. Not games where you're going to learn a lot about your football team, So I look at USC, I look at South Carolina, I look at South Alabama as check-in points. What did they do in this game? What did they do in that game? And with South Carolina, they gave up 250 rushing yards just about to the quarterback, to the running back. So I'm still a little concerned defensively about the big plays and how they'll stop a dual-threat quarterback because Gio Lopez was dual-threat. Ethan Garbers, UCLA's quarterback, was dual-threat. But Jalen Milroe is still left, right? You're not going to see that kind of an athlete until you play Alabama. Taven Green from Arkansas, he's a great athlete. More dynamic than the dual-threat quarterbacks you've seen this season, I would say. Lenore Sellers is pretty dynamic as well. I would say Lenore Sellers is the closest thing to a Jalen Milroe, at least from a running standpoint, not a passing standpoint, and you couldn't stop him. So am I feeling over the moon excited about what this defense can do when it comes to playing Alabama and some other teams of that caliber? No, I don't think that they're ready to compete, against those teams, but that's not the team they're facing next week. And Ole Miss certainly can move the ball on the ground. Jackson Dart can run it. We saw that a lot last year. But that's not necessarily the challenge you face against Ole Miss. Later in the season, I'm going to be concerned leading up until proven otherwise. But I'm going to give Blake Baker his flowers. Right now, this rush defense, Bo Davis as well, Kevin Peoples, all of them, they all get credit. Number 44 in the country in rush defense. LSU's defense last year didn't excel at one particular thing. They didn't stop the run. They didn't stop the pass. They didn't get pressure. What you're seeing this season is they're actually developing some strengths. So the run defense, top 50 in the nation, that will play. I love that. You're also top 20 in sacks with 15 as a team. Braden Swinson leading the way with 6, if my math was correct. So you're doing some things well, almost at an elite level. Now, can that continue through this, tougher part of the schedule? That's the question. But what I wanted to see is when I look at stats, when I look at your defense, I want to see a couple things you do well so that I know game in, game out, this is what they're going to do. This is how they're going to game plan. This is something that the opposition needs to be scared of. Last year, there was nothing to be scared of. So, and this is the macro theme, right? Because the offense, I got a lot of stuff written down here. I don't really need to tell you a lot of this. I did a whole segment on it. LSU's offense is elite again. Number 22 in total offense. Top 20 in third down conversion percentage. They're top 6 in first downs picked up. Number 6 passing offense in the country. And also number 5 in sacks allowed. They've only allowed 2 sacks the whole season. You've got, 1, 2, 3. You got 4 different receivers over 200 yards before Chris Hilton has even touched the field and returned. Caden Durham is emerging as a superstar, nursing an injury, should be back for the Ole Miss game. He's holding it down in the running game. He's also getting involved in the receiving game as well. And Garrett Nussmeier is off to a really good start. I know he had a couple interceptions against South Alabama. Kind of in garbage time, though, in a situation where you're up by 30-some-odd points. Who really cares that much that he threw those interceptions at that point in time? I don't. So my point is, your offense is elite. Again, they're up here. Your defense, it's got to just get to right here, right? It's just got to be good enough because I think that Nussmeier and company can go punch for punch, blow for blow with other offenses, just like Jaden Daniels and that offense did last year. I mean, they went punch for punch with Ole Miss. The problem was they ended up losing the fight because they couldn't play any defense, right? Because you couldn't get a critical stop or at least hold the other team to a field goal when you needed that to happen. I think that this year's defense is in a better position to get that done. So, am I still concerned about LSU in this bye week heading into Ole Miss? I still am a little bit concerned. The defense has been better, and that's kind of been my point, is that we've seen improvement week 1 to, week 5, week 6, whatever we're in here. Is it where it needs to be that I've seen? I don't think so, but I think it is at a place where it's good enough where if your offense is clicking on all cylinders like it has for the majority of the early part of the season here, the first half of the season, and the defense that we've seen the past 6 quarters, including the last 2 against UCLA, is what we're going to get, what LSU is going to get, I think that you will compete in every game this year, and I think it's good enough for you to pull off an upset, quote-unquote, against Ole Miss, just like Kentucky did in Oxford this past week. So, am I still concerned? Slightly. But is this team capable? Do I have a more than 50% confidence that LSU can beat a team like Ole Miss next week with the current state of the LSU Tigers? Yes. Yes, I do. And I couldn't say that a couple weeks ago. I would have taken Ole Miss by any point spread based on what I'd seen from LSU in South Carolina a couple weeks ago. So, seen improvement. It's in a good place. They've got more work to do, but all you can do is start with the first week and move on to the next. So use the bye, improve. Next week, it's all about Ole Miss. And I think LSU can get the job done. That's not an official on-the-record prediction, but right now, I would give it 58-42 confidence that LSU could beat Ole Miss at home here. So let me know what you think. Like it, subscribe. Next episode, we're giving you mid-season awards. Freshman of the Year, Breakout Player of the Year, things like that. That's going to be in the next episode. Check back for that. Appreciate y'all watching. Keep it locked to Game Time with John Eads and WAFB.